Hello, everybody. Did you ever ask yourself how come Switzerland got to be the best chocolate producer in the world? Well, let's find out and dig a little bit into the history of Swiss chocolate producers. The great botanist Carl von Linné was by no means the first to recognize the unique merits of the plant, to which he gave the botanical name of Theobroma cacao. Theobroma means food of the gods. As such as the food of princes and the wealthy, cocoa was already recognized by the Toltecs, Mayas, and Aztecs, from which we got the name cacaote. Around 600 AD, the Mayas were already cultivating cocoa in Central America and established the earliest known plantations. They used the cocoa beans to prepare a very nourishing and fiery drink, which they called chocolat, from which we get the modern word chocolate, and valued it so highly that the beans were also used as a means of payment. The Aztecs valued the beans equally highly when they conquered Mexico in the 12th century. In 1615, the Infanta Anna of Austria, who grew up in Madrid, is thought to have taken drinking chocolate to the French court when she married King Louis VIII. In Paris, it became a badge of status and a fashionable drink of the aristocracy, and from there it spread to the upper echelons of society throughout the whole of Europe. Well, so it didn't take long for chocolate to arrive in Switzerland, and it took a bit of a detour. Traveling journeymen also came to Italy from other countries to learn the art of the confectionaires and chocolatieri. Among them, François-Louis Caillet. He lived from 1796 to 1852, who they then opened a mechanized chocolate production facility in Gosier near Vevey in 1819, establishing the oldest brand of Swiss chocolate, which is still in existence today. This chocolate finally arrived in a country where it was soon to find its greatest patrons and pioneers who would make Switzerland the #1 country for chocolate by the early 20th century. Well, the Swiss seem to be born with a certain tendency to produce sweet treats, but it is still amazing that the Swiss, of all people, became so successful with a product whose ingredients, cocoa and sugar, had to be purchased from abroad at high prices. They managed this thanks to their thriving for high quality, another innate Swiss virtue, and their realization that they, working in a small country with a few raw materials, could only stand up to the powerful foreign competition if they were better than the rest. Of course, it didn't take long for the competition to kind of figure things out, and so Philippe Suchard started in 1825, Jacques Fourier, Kohler, and then he had Rudolf Sprengli, whose name is still around, and Maestrani, also I've seen his name still. He was from Lucerne, started in Lucerne and then moved to St. Gallen. And he had Daniel Peter, George Muntz, and Rudolf Lindt. And Lindt is still, his name's still around. He started in Bern in 1879. Alex Sergeot, and also in Bern was Jean Dobler, who is still producing chocolate. Now, Henry Nestle, who lived from 1814 to 1890, was not concerned with chocolate himself. He had invented a milk-based infant cereal, the famous Farine Lactée, and established a factory in Vevey, which soon gained international recognition. His company moved into chocolate in 1904 through a contract with Peter Kohlers, who developed and produced a special sweet milk chocolate for Nestle, which Nestle sold via its international distribution network. Well, Nestle in 2021 had sales of $87.1 billion. They had 276,000 employees. They had 354 factories in 79 different countries. Of course, it wasn't just all chocolate. They expanded all different foods. Even the Perrier water is one of Nestle's products, if you want to call that product. Of course, one of the main ingredients for success with the Swiss was that they were able to mix refined cocoa mixture with milk. And Daniel Peter was from Vevey was the first one who was successfully making chocolate that way. And because of the addition of milk, it did not just increase the nutritional value of chocolate and refine its flavor, it also gave rise to a fundamental change in the manufacturer's calculation. So, you add the extra milk and it all made sense. Of course, it didn't take long for kids to figure out what was sweet, and parents had to fight for their share. Now, the cocoa fruit actually grows on the trunk, and when they harvest it, they just knock it off and get the cocoa seeds out. Now, there's a few different varieties of cocoa, but 90% of the total cocoa harvested comes from the Forastero family, which is mainly cultivated in West Africa, Brazil, and Southeast Asia. The oldest cultivation areas are to be found in the north of South America and in Central America, predominantly Mexico, Venezuela, and Ecuador. And here is the list of the main cocoa producing countries in order of importance. Looks like the Ivory Coast is right on top of the list. So the Swiss chocolate industry obtains most of its cocoa from the Ivory Coast, Ghana, and Ecuador. On this chart, you can see by volume which country produced the most. It looks like Ivory Coast definitely is the largest producer. Of course, the Swiss might be also the biggest buyer. And in this chart, we can see who is buying most of the chocolate. Germany looks like on top, Britain. Of course, Germany probably has a population of 66 million, and Switzerland, I guess, around 8 million. But nonetheless, they all like the Swiss chocolate. However, as per capita, Swiss got them all beat. Look at that. They eat more than anybody else. However, I can't blame them. A good thing, and you always got to support your own people. On this chart, you can also see who else likes the Swiss chocolate. Looks like Germany is pretty big on that list there. Now that we know where it's grown, how it's harvested, and now we actually can figure out how we're going to make chocolate. And the key thing is you got to make sure that the coffee beans are super dry, and that way you can process it. So you got basically 3 types of chocolate. You got dark chocolate, you got milk chocolate, and you got white chocolate. So once you got the cocoa powder and you got your milk all mixed, and you start mixing it, don't you just want to stick your finger in there and taste it a little bit. And then it goes into the fabrication. And these are actually the chocolates upside down, and then they vibrate them. And here's a process of get the grains in and work your way through it until you got it all sorted out. So then you inject it into the molds, and then you remove the mold, and the algae get the different molds for different colors. And of course my favorite one is the rabbit. And so now you have that famous chocolate Easter bunny. I'm not sure how you'll be able to get those stripes in there, but they're there. Now here they got really creative. Figured, oh, you want to make Swiss chocolate, you got to show off and see if we can imitate a Swiss pocket knife. And that's probably the best job in the world. You sit there checking out the chocolate, and I wonder if you're allowed to taste them, but you probably get sick of it after a while. And there it's all packaged and ready to be purchased or consumed. This is some of the posters that they used to sell chocolate over 100 years ago. I like the one from Tober. Look at the three kings we're bringing. Of course, a lot of them had a farm theme. Caillé wanted to be sort of an upscale chocolate producer. And this Lindt chocolate in Bern was actually the chocolate sold in 1879. Amazing. Now, my mother had a small grocery stores in Switzerland, and she also sold chocolates. And as kids, we always kind of hang around, and every once in a while we get lucky and we get a little chocolate. Well, my favorite one was Mohrenkopf. Now you're probably going to say, what's a Mohrenkopf? Well, here it comes. This is a Mohrenkopf chocolate with foam filling in it. And you say, yeah, okay, no big deal. Well, if you knew German, Mohrenkopf actually meant a Negro's head. And as a kid, I don't think I ever saw a black person until I was maybe 17 or 18, and never gave it any thought until I was older. And that's kind of weird, but we just thought, well, it was just another chocolate treat, and it got to be somewhat controversial, and eventually they had to stop. Well, they didn't stop producing it, they had to rebranded it. So they came up with the idea, well, let's just add a white head to it and it won't be so racist. So, we got a white head and they got a colored head. And then they thought, well, let's try something else. And then they repackaged the whole thing and they called it Negro Kisses. Well, I don't know whether that was a good idea. And said, well, let's just make it look cute so it doesn't look so bad. But nonetheless, it was a bit of a flop. Well, now that we're looking at all this good chocolate, there's some prejudice we got to clear up here. So some people say chocolate makes you fat. Wrong. Milk chocolate provides about 500 calories per 100 gram and contains 50% carbohydrate and 31.5% fat and 9% protein. In terms of calories, a line of chocolate weighing about 15 grams is equivalent to an apple or a slice of whole wheat bread. Well, another one is chocolate causes tooth decay. Well, not entirely false. Tooth decay is caused by bacteria in the mouth, which forms a coating on the surface of the teeth. All carbohydrate, which can be broken down, such as sugars and starches, provide an ideal breeding ground for these microorganisms. Well, another one. Chocolate causes headaches. Well, it doesn't, not for me. People who suffer from migraine are quickly to blame chocolate. But in mass screenings, chocolate was a factor, but not the only factor. in only around 15% of the migraine patients. So don't give me a headache about that. Then another one, chocolate causes acne. That's wrong. Acne is a result of blocked sebaceous glands. Various studies have made it clear that there is no connection between acne and the consumption of chocolate. Then next, chocolate is a risk factor contributing to raised cholesterol levels. Wrong. One of the main components of cocoa butter is stearic acid and a saturated fatty acid. But stearic acid reacts differently in the body from other saturated fatty acids, does not affect the cholesterol level, and does not give rise to any deposits in the blood level. Or then people say people become dependent on chocolate. Well, wrong. It is true that chocolate contains theobromine and traces of caffeine, substances which belong to the methylxanthine group, which acts as a mild stimulant, but they are not toxic. Well, you might get a little dependent, but it's not toxic. Well, and here is the best one. Chocolate causes constipation. No, it's wrong. Digestive problems such as constipations are usually attributable to poor eating habits and not to individual foods, and that includes chocolate. So if you're constipated, go eat beans. Now this chocolate has a filling of cherry brandy, and it's been the demise of many chocolate smugglers, because what happens on the airplane, they get hot and they melt, and then the chocolate melts and the cherry starts flowing, the schnapps starts flowing out, and when you get to the customs you look rather embarrassed because you smell like booze and you look like a chocolate freak. Anyway, happened to me and happened to families visiting. And so with all the information we have now, there's still one secret ingredient that nobody wants to tell you about. See, what secret is the sweet sound of those bells that sweetens up the milk and makes a perfect chocolate. You can't beat that. Till later. So long.